Today, I am very excited to be joined by Stephen Petch. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Andy. Pleasure to be
Stephen,
here.
appreciate you coming on and excited to spend a little bit of time with you today. Stephen, we have a global audience. We reach people all over the world, as does our product. So if you wouldn't mind, just spend a few minutes properly introducing yourself and give us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, I'm Stephen Petch. I've had almost 35 years of experience in project controls across my career. Worked in both Australia and Canada, lived in both Australia and Canada, currently living in Canada. Spent 20 years of my career in Australia working in construction and in with EPCM firms. Worked extensively here in Canada with EPCM firms and with owners organisations across multiple industries. So working across mining, infrastructure, building, multiple industries. Worked onshore and offshore in Australia. So extensive experience across multiple industries in project controls and working in multiple countries, and also working with companies around the world that have sites, particularly in South America, Africa, Australia. That's been the main focus.
Stephen, let's have a bit of fun. So I had the opportunity in my career to work for an Australian company that then took me on a journey up into Canada, Fort McMurray specifically. What's the attraction for Australians coming to Canada? It seems to be a pretty natural migration and path. Is it mining? Is that what the thread is that brings the Australians into Canada?
For me, what brought me into Canada, honestly, was I really wanted to live in the snow. Um, so
That's great.
somewhere where I could skiing is a passion. So I moved
Yep.
over to Canada. Loved living in the cold and going skiing, and that's what I did. Unfortunately, I was in Toronto, so it was not the best ski hills around, but we made the best of that, and the kids and I certainly spent a lot of time skiing up in Blue Mountain,
That's
and then got an opportunity to move out here to Vancouver, which has just been a godsend the last 4 years. It's been
yeah,
fantastic.
that's
Yeah.
fantastic. I appreciate you sharing that. And Vancouver is just an amazing environment and place. That's really great. All right, let's jump in. Stephen, between the two of us, we probably have about 80 years of experience. So let's start off with in all of your decades of experience in project controls and enterprise systems. Let's talk about the importance of the people, right? The process and the tool. All too often, organizations get focused on the tool. What tooling are we going to use to be more efficient? But let's talk about the importance of all three: the people that you need to do a major system transformation, the processes, and the tools.
So, extensively for me, I've worked on a lot of projects, and the best projects I've worked on and the most successful projects I've worked on has actually been working with people, having the right team with the right experience. And not just about the team and experience, but how that team works together. So that is a huge factor in making successful projects. Underlying that and underpinning that are both the tools and the process. So the really important thing around the processes are that if you want to improve, you need to actually have processes in place. Without the process, you can't improve. So that, and you need to be able to build on that, not just for the project itself, but for a company on a whole. Also, around the tools have helped us to be more efficient, um, and it provides us with a lot of data. What I see around with the importance of the tools is that data, and to have the data to be able to make good decisions. But to do that, you also need the people with the right experience who can take and look at that data and look at those things and say, hey, there's something wrong here, or there's going to be an issue coming up in a little while. this is what we need to do to try and fix it. So it allows us to actually look into a little bit more into the future, to provide us with information to help us to make really good decisions on projects. I mean, that's the underlying importance, but I can't stress more than anything in here, it's about having the right team in
So
there to help us.
yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. So that team, right? That team comes from many different organizations as well, right? And trying to get that team to all work towards that common goal of a successful project. We just talk a little bit about your experience. Like how do you get those people and that those teams aligned to the goal of what are some of the techniques you've used?
So, um, so some of the techniques that I've used. So for me personally, when I'm working with my own team, Um, I try to empower my team to be the best that they can, to allow them to do their jobs, not to be sitting over their shoulders, but to give them a good understanding of a good plan and work into that plan. And then if we're working away from that plan, to get back onto the plan. So, that's part of what I do. But I also try and foster relationships. So it's really about those relationships that you're working in. It's not just about the working relationships, it's about the personal relationships that you have. And you need to build those personal relationships, because without the personal relationship, you can't have the trust. And it's all about, the teamwork is all about trust, and you need to be able to trust your team. But you also need to put in the checks and balances around those things to ensure that when we're going down the path and we're all working down that path, that's how we need to check, have the trust that also that they'll come to you and say, "Hey, Steve, there's something wrong here, right?" And we need to find what those issues are. In the big scheme of things, across when you're working across multiple companies, multiple contractors, you still have to take pretty much the same approach. You have to build that relationship and you have to build the trust, but you also need to be working to the plan. And without working to the plan, if you're not working to the plan, you won't achieve it, because there is no target set. So we need to also make sure that we set really good plans, build the relationships, and then work together to achieve that goal. And it takes a lot of work, right?
Yeah, for
And
sure.
and sometimes in our when we're working with our consultants and contractors, if they don't have the skill set, is to help bring them up to have that skill set, to help them to get there. What we see in the industry today a lot is that we have a lot of companies out there who may not have the skill set that we're looking for. They have the people to do the actual physical work, but when we're looking around, managing to the plan, doing the reporting, managing the cost, that some of those, they don't have the right skill sets. And so when we're working in that environment, um, we'll have to help them to get to the level that we're looking for, and it can take quite a lot of work to get there.
Yeah, for sure, Stephen. Appreciate those insights. I think the key thing that rings out for me too is to be able to work that plan, right? You got to have everyone on the same data, right? Everyone has to be looking at the same data. Stephen, our industry, the one that you and I have chosen to spend our careers in, right, building, large capital programs across many industries, often gets, and I say often, it seems like every day, it gets criticized for not using technology or, the engineering and construction and mining and oil and gas and all the industries that we support are laggards in technology. I actually take offense to that. I can remember 40 years ago, my first job was using software to design a roadway, right? There was to do the geometry. There was a software program. So I think the people that don't cover the industry or have worked, more importantly, have worked in the industry, truly appreciate the magnitude of technology that's being used every day. And by the way, for many years, what's your earliest memory of using data to drive a project?
So, well, back in the actual first project I ever worked on was back in I'm going to say this, but 1988, back in Australia in a construction company, a steel construction company, fabrication and construction, and we actually had a document management system that was written um, for us to be able to track all the documents across the entire project. We were running a construction of a major shopping centre. We had people working in multiple cities, and we had to track information from engineering, from the construction to the construction site. And we actually set that up with the company I was working with. It was written on an old VAX machine. It was an old, which took up the computer, took up the whole room at the time. But from day one, when I started working, we were using technology. We were using technology there. We were using technology in scheduling at the time. Old scheduling software timeline on old 286, 386 machines, long time ago. But we've been working with, and I've been working with technology my whole career. It's part of the thing for me that I haven't really enjoyed is actually helping to develop and build those systems across my career. And I've seen, originally we had scheduling systems, we had document management systems, we had cost systems already laid out, and from day one. So the technology's always been there. What we've been doing is improving on it as we go through. It used to take a day to run a schedule, to hit the button on timeline to run to schedule the schedule. Today it takes 2 seconds. So the things that have changed in my career, that's what I've seen things change to make us more efficient across the board at the end of the day.
Yeah, and so in the spirit of the name of this episode and this program is True Talks, and we always try to drive truths, right? So I think that's the reason I'm so passionate about it, Stephen, is if you look at the next generation, the young people that are coming up through, we have to make sure that we articulate that engineering and construction, the use of technology, because this next generation, they've grown up with it. I mean, they've grown up with technology in their lives. And when I hear, we're laggards in technology, it does strike a chord with me, because it is an industry that has been surrounded by technologies for as long as you and I have both been in it.
Yeah. And if you look today, there's engineering, procurement, construction, it's all linked up through technology today. Exactly. Right? It's and the information needs to flow across those from one to another, and that's what we do today. We actually move that information and that from one to another, and we're very data centric. We're really data driven, and looking at what we want to do. When you say to me, Andy, we need to be able to take this, and for the younger people today, what they're going to have the advantage is there's data. There's a lot of data sitting there, and using that data and utilizing that data and be able to see what's in there, to look for trends, to look at how things have performed before, look for issues that we've had before. That's the information that's going to be super valuable going forward. We didn't have that before. We used to do it project by project, but now we're getting a bigger storage of data that's in there. Once we've got the data, AI can sit across a lot of that as well. So
it doesn't have to be a unique project every time.
It does not have to be a unique project every time. And that's the thing that I think that the legacy that we can leave from what we've done, because we've learned a lot, and that's what we're putting back into the tools today. Right, we're putting those things back, that smarts that we've had, that experience that we've had over 40 years. We're getting them back into the tools to allow us to help us in the future.
Yeah, Stephen, I think it's really important. I think every day that I wake up here at Contruent, it's trying to take that almost 30 years now, right, back to the Aris Prism days, and we have experts on staff, right, and what we're trying to and what we do. What we are doing is building that expertise into the tool. So when it does come out of the box as a SaaS solution, we're building that expertise in it. And if you want to leave a legacy on an industry, build that expertise back into something that people can reuse is super important. So with that, look, talk to the audience about a project that you were able to really harness the power of the people. You had to build good process and kind of wrap that with a tool. What one project in all these decades, Stephen, that you love to talk about when you sit there and say, man, if I look back in my career, this is a project that had major challenges, and here's how we overcame those.
Well, the project for me was actually back when I was working in Toronto. I was working on a subway project. It was working for the owner. And what we had to do on that project was the owner on that job really didn't have any process systems tools for managing the execution of a project of that size, a $3.5 billion project. When I came on board, there was no controls people in there, and we're already in the feasibility phase. So it was really surprising to me when I went there. I was seconded in for a couple of months, and ended up staying there for 3 years. And so we took that project, and with the help of a really good project director, and this is one of the things, it was really had some support from the top, but we had to build everything in that project, from cost management, document control, estimating, the procurement management, from start to finish. The process for managing those projects typically was, I'll give it to the contractor and let them do what they needed to do. But what we needed to do in that project was actually, as an owner, be able to set up the project in a way that we could see where that project was heading, and not just relying on the contractors and the consultants to do that work at the time. So we built that, we integrated it all, we built the team on that project. There was over 100 people working on that project, and really successfully working on that project by doing what we said before, Andy, which was, developing the team. And that was a really big focus from me, but also from the project director to develop that team and make the team be really successful, right? And if you really want to look at some of the things in here that we did, we really started looking at things around project health. And project health isn't just around, and that's what we set up to help us on that project. But it was not just about the health in terms of schedule and cost, but it was in terms of the health of the project team. And so we looked at that from all of those different aspects. And that was, for me, it was a really good project to work with and work on, and work with the people on that project was probably, that was the best team I'd ever worked with. And the project director, he'd had over 30 years of experience. He'd worked on multiple projects around the world. He came back to me at the end of that project and said, this was the best team he'd ever worked with. And I think, underlying that was because, one, we all worked together. We all had a good plan. He put all the checks and balances in to make sure we were working towards that plan. I provided all the data to show that where we were working to that plan. But we had a good control on that project. We had good control on scope, good control on the cost, good control on the schedule, and we had underlying all of that as well was the risk management system, which is extremely important. So when we put all of those things together, that made us a really successful project. And well, I can say one of the indicators that we had on that project was that when we went from stage to stage to stage, the cost really didn't change. So we had really good at the front end of the project, from an early stage to when we were about to go into execution. The overall cost, taking into account inflation, etc., escalation, but it didn't change from one stage to the other. And that just tells us, one, we had good engineering, we had good scope management, we had good risk management, and from that, good estimation from one stage to the next, and that really made it successful. Unfortunately, at the time, I left that project before it fully went into execution. but that was the most successful project that I'd worked on.
Yes, Stephen, thanks for sharing that. I think a couple of key takeaways, right? As we, our audience listens to this, you have to have a project director that has that vision, right? And has that experience of what good looks like. And by the way, his or her reputation is on the line, right? And as you and I have, and as many people in this business have, you move from project to project to project. And that experience is so important. So having that project director that has that vision is key. The other thing I love what you said was around the health of the project and not just SPI, CPI, right? It was down to the people, right? It was how are we performing? How's the organization? It sounds like a lot of leading indicators too, right? It wasn't just reporting back.
So
And I guess
Andy, just
yeah,
one
go
of
ahead,
my
please.
catch cries, one of my things that I've always said is healthy teams make healthy projects.
Exactly.
And that's what I found really across my career, working in a healthy team, and I've worked in some unhealthy teams.
Yeah,
And not all. And when I'm talking about healthy, it's not just about the project team. It's about the big picture team, the contractors, the owners, the EPCMs, the EPCs, those type of people. And if you don't have that full health across the board, you won't have a healthy project.
no
And
question.
and no matter what you do, you won't be able to change it. And that's
Absolutely.
that's unfortunate in the industry, but that's really one of the key lessons for me is trying to ensure that we get healthy
Exactly.
projects and healthy teams, right?
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, and I think the other thing for me, listening to that story and that success is then you can go replicate it, right? So you can take what you learn from the Toronto subway project, and then when you go to your next project, right, you take those artifacts and those processes and that's what it's all about, right? And for me, just taking that experience to the next project.
Yeah,
Steve,
and Andy,
good,
just
please.
before we do that though,
Yeah.
just going back when you said taking it to the next project, we actually left that there. And one of the people who was working for me back in at that time as a on that project is now head of the PMO. And a lot of the learnings that we had through that project were now went into that PMO, into the processes, into the tools that they're using today.
It's fantastic. I mean, that's a success in itself, right? That they not only replicated it, but then made it the standard, right? Made it the standard for the organization.
Yep.
Steve, my last question, and I'll leave you with any final thoughts that you want to express. Steve, what is the change in the role of the owner? So you gave a great example that the owner of the subway project really did care, right, and wanted to have more control instead of just pushing the risk out to the delivery teams. In 2025, what do you think the role of the owner is? Do you think more owners are saying, "Hey, I don't want to just roll the risk. I actually want to manage it." Well, do you see a change over your career and where we are today?
Actually, it's a bit of a cycle, Andy. So, you know, back when I first started in the industry, the owners used to run the projects. They had their own, a lot of their own engineering, a lot of their own project divisions, and then it moved away from that to EPC, EPCM type setups. Different in different industries, because if you look at the work in the petrochemical industry, they've stayed pretty much with the same type of model for quite some time. I think in the mining industry, it's shifted. And if you look back today, um, or you look at today from where we were even 5 years ago, the owners are seeing, and I've been working with an owners team over the last 8 years. I've been working with owners teams. Um, you can see a shift to the owners moving more to managing the execution themselves, which is a risk. But what's coming along with that is they need to manage that risk on the projects. Um, One of the things I've seen in there is the owners, particularly, they may be taking the risk on, but managing the risk has not something that they've typically done.
Right.
And in some cases, with one of the owners that I was working with, they were absolutely all over the risk. And so managing and taking that risk was a key component of managing the project. So it's a little bit different in different industries. The way I see it, I see in the mining, it's a little less around little less. I say it again, a little less risk management, right? However, the shift is more to managing the execution themselves, and that's a big risk. So from the owners, they're going to need to put in the tools, the systems, the processes. But it's the key here for the owners is that they're not an integrated team. What's going to happen with that is they're going to be integrators, which is a really big risk, and they're going to have to manage that risk. And part of managing that risk will be with the processes and the systems that's going to be able to integrate that across. Again, the team and the people are super important. But what you're going to need to do, and what the owners are going to need to do if they take that work on, is put in those systems to allow that integration across the engineering, procurement, construction. And that is a really big risk that I see today for the owners.
Yeah, for sure, Stephen. I also think that'll drive them to different delivery models, right? So, like you said, it's cycles, right? So, maybe they shift from a delivery model of EPCM to integrated project delivery, right? I mean, you'll see changes in those delivery models as well as the
Yes.
owners take on more risk, and they need the delivery model that's going to best suit them for that particular project. So,
Yeah,
really
we see
important.
that today, where the projects will and the projects team will sit down to develop what that model is going to look like. Um, but I'll say this with a bit of a butt, Andy, but the it it's something I'm not sure that the owners really understand how much work it takes to be an integrator versus being someone in an integrated team. Very,
Yes.
very different, and that's going to take a lot of work to be a really successful model.
Therein lies the opportunity for both of us. So, me as the tool provider and the system integrator, and you as bringing that experience of successful project delivery. So, Stephen, we are at kind of time. I try to keep these to about 30 minutes so the audience can consume them. But first and foremost, thank you. You've been incredibly gracious with your time, and I appreciate it. So does the entire, not only Contruent organization, but the entire project controls community. So folks out there in the audience, please keep this conversation rolling. Use your social media channels. Ask Stephen and I questions. Comment on the content. We definitely want to keep it rolling here, as we had the opportunity to tee up some really great topics. Stephen, thank you so much, bud. Appreciate your time, and I'm sure we'll have you on again and have more to discuss in this ever-changing world of project delivery and project controls. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure, Andy. Thanks for having me on.
Appreciate it, buddy. Thank you. See you soon.